the great Paul McCartney. For late-night music buffs, Off the Wall keys into the current music scene, and that's tomorrow morning, 3:25 a.m, here on Central. Now the news.
The news from ITN.
Police fear the pregnant woman who vanished on a busy motorway could have been abducted. Detectives say they're extremely concerned for the safety of Mrs. Marie Wilkes. She disappeared after telephoning police to report that her car had broken down on the M50 between Tewkesbury and Gloucester. She'd left her baby son with her younger sister in the car, but never returned.
A police patrol car was dispatched to find Mrs. Wilkes only minutes after her call was first received. But when they arrived at the scene, the motorway phone she had used was found dangling from its mounting. She'd been cut off halfway through the call. 22-year-old Marie Wilkes, who's 7 months pregnant, had simply disappeared. Her car had been abandoned on the hard shoulder of the M50 facing towards Worcester. Her 11-year-old sister and 13-month-old baby were found wandering along the vergeway. The police carried out a reconstruction today, hoping to jog the memory of drivers.
There is no reason that I've been able to discover so far as to why she should have disappeared.
How concerned are you for her safety?
I'm getting increasingly concerned for her safety.
A major search is now underway by the police. They've appealed to the public to help in any way they can. David Chater, ITN in Worcester.
English soccer fans are on their way home after another night of violence in West Germany. A police spokesman in Frankfurt said they were glad to get rid of the English supporters.
As the majority of English supporters started their journey home, the city of Frankfurt was still recovering from its third successive night of street disturbances. The police dealt with dozens of brawls and complaints of vandalism, most trouble centred on the city's red light district. At times their answer appeared to be to arrest almost everyone who spoke English. 40 supporters were taken into custody in this one street. Even locals told us most had been drinking peacefully, but when a small group damaged a bar, police arrested everyone in the area. At one stage they ran out of police vans. Supporters had to sit in the street for half an hour awaiting transport to the cells. In a nearby street, the police prevented a potentially lethal confrontation, intercepting a gang of young Germans. One had been carrying a revolver. The gun was loaded. The Germans appeared to have been heading for the bars where the English supporters had congregated. The night ended like so many others during a football tournament that will be remembered more for scenes like these than the team's performance.
It's okay, yeah?
Paul Davis, ITN, Frankfurt.
The defeated Irish team arrived back in Dublin today to a hero's welcome. The players were greeted at the airport by thousands of fans cheering them home. Among the well-wishers was the Irish Prime Minister, Mr. Charles Haughey, who had a special honour for the team's English manager, Jack Charlton.
On behalf, I want to confer on him the status of honorary Irishman.
And Mrs. Thatcher is expected to make her views clear about the damage done by English soccer hooligans at a meeting in Canada with the West German Chancellor Helmut Kohl. The two leaders are having talks ahead of this evening's gathering of the 7 major industrial nations at the Toronto summit.
The summit opened here to the sound of bagpipes and the vision of security everywhere. A flurry of excitement caused by the overnight arrest of an Irishman subsided somewhat when it was discovered he was wanted for immigration offences. Nevertheless, Mrs. Thatcher's security, in particular, is being taken more than seriously. It's her 10th economic summit. She's already seized for herself the mantle of keynote speaker. For this is President Reagan's last such summit, and the other leaders are already looking to underpin the continuity that they want to ensure will endure after he's left the White House. Even before the first formal summit session, Mrs. Thatcher had the irksome task of apologising to Germany's Chancellor Kohl for the behaviour of English football fans in his country.
Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister has welcomed the visit to Tehran by 4 British politicians, saying it'll improve relations between the two countries. 3 MPs and an SLD pair will leave London later this evening on a fact-finding visit. They say they hope to discuss the fate of the British hostages in Beirut, but insist they're not in the business of doing deals. And that's all the early news on ITN. We're back again this evening at 9:45.
Good evening. The husband of the missing Worcestershire woman Marie Wilkes has made an emotional plea to Central News. Mrs Wilkes, who's 7 months pregnant, disappeared on the M50 motorway last night. Richard Barnett reports.
A team of more than 50 officers, backed up by a police helicopter and spotter plane, have searched all day for 22-year-old Mrs Marie Wilkes. She went missing last night on the M50 motorway between Ledbury and Tewkesbury. Mrs Wilkes' Marina car broke down and she parked it on the hard shoulder. She left her 13-month-old baby Mark being cared for by her sister Georgina in the car and went to an emergency phone box. This was the emergency telephone box Mrs Wilkes used to call for help. When police arrived, she'd vanished. The telephone was dangling from its cord. Today, police used 2 other children to reconstruct what officers found next. Georgina, carrying baby Mark, looking anxiously for Mrs Wilkes. Police say they've no idea how Mrs Wilkes vanished. They've few leads.